Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the JLX Friends with Benefits podcast. With me, your host, as always, Xander Conobit. And as you can most likely guess from the title, we have a very special guest, someone who I'm very grateful for having on today, as I'm sure you guys will be as well. We're going to be picking Beth's brains over a number of different subjects here today, and we're really, really happy to have you guys. Now, of course, Beth is a influencer, or could say, but also, and the main reason I think that we wanted to speak to her today is because Beth is far more than that. She's been far more than that for a long time. She has a lot of fantastic knowledge. She does a lot of great things for the people. And fundamentally, I think you'll all agree she's incredibly relatable as well. And I think she'll have some great knowledge that we can pick on this afternoon, and hopefully give you guys a little bit of something to think about for the new year, which is obviously fast approaching, and maybe even a slight change of direction for some of you. I know that off the back of, I think, one of the last podcasts we did, we had a few people write in like, hey, business wise, what should I be doing? And obviously there's no one better to get in than someone who's done it themselves. So Beth, I'm going to hand over to you if you'd like to give yourself a little intro, and we'll kick things off.
Scary bit, isn't it? So my name's Beth. You may or not know me from Instagram and YouTube. So I have a page on there. I work with Gymshark and Women's Best currently. I'm trying to get back into YouTube. I did used to do it a lot more. It's something I'm trying to focus on. And about a year and a half ago, so coming up to 2 years, I started a business called Life Bar with my partner Alex. I met him, actually, he was doing meal prep when I was actually trying to prep for my first ever show when I was doing bodybuilding, and we met and we kind of were just so much on the same path for everything in life. And he currently had his little meal prep shop that he was doing, but he wanted something so much bigger, which is kind of where Life Bar kind of evolved from. And I've always loved the idea of doing something that's not totally related to me, my page, and how I look. So something more. I'd love to be known for more than just Beth that works with these brands and has this pretty good body or whatever and does bodybuilding and things like that. So yeah, things have changed a lot in the last year and a half, but I would love for people to know me for both of those things, if that makes sense. So I think that sums up me pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice intro, and I think that's when I said influencer, I was like, I wouldn't even class you as that necessarily. I think if you went back like 2 years ago, I'd say that was probably a fairer comment.
Yeah.
But now
Yeah.
I would much rather go down the lines of entrepreneur, businesswoman.
Yeah, I get scared with those words, because there's a lot of obviously negative press around entrepreneurship and things like that and stuff. But yeah, I'd love for people to know me more than just for my Instagram page and my YouTube page. That was always my long-term goal. So that's still something I'm heavily working towards. But I think I'm getting there, which is nice. It's nice.
I think that before we dive into the questions and so on, I think it's a thing that can go either way, and I think that's a bit like the term entrepreneur. Like the way I view entrepreneur in the most plain manner is just someone who is striving for more from less.
Yeah.
So I guess that's maybe not the root definition of it, but I can see people being entrepreneurs with skills, not just, I think a lot of people see, in an Instagram bio, entrepreneur, and you're thinking this guy is just, nothing really, just, working out in his basement, doing his thing. But I think for me, like the term entrepreneur means, developing something from not a lot, or developing something massive from, something
small.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do that with emotion, you can do that with an object, you can do that with money. If you look at coaching, for example, as a coach, you could be an entrepreneur of finance because you could develop loads of ideas and things like that. But you're also an entrepreneur of psychology in a sense. You're someone who takes a basic knowledge of something and you want to develop that over a few years until you become someone much better. But yeah, I do understand that a lot of people have ruined the term.
Unfortunately, it's really upsetting because obviously a lot of people strive for that term, and then I think it's so widely used now, it kind of diffuses the real meaning, and people get caught up in the stereotype of, an entrepreneur. When I think of an entrepreneur, sometimes I think of a guy in London with a really cut suit on and shades on, and he's there doing trading and stuff, and he's got his Rolex on. Like that's just my kind of perception. But like you said, entrepreneurship is a lot more than that, but it's so easy to get caught up in the kind of social perception of what that is today, because so many people are kind of using that term, but potentially it's not the right term to be using, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's one of them, isn't it? It's one of those widely used words now, but people tend to just get a bit confused as to actually what it really means. So no, I get that totally.
Absolutely. So we usually kick off our podcasts by asking whoever's on, what they're excited about at the moment. So actually this falls at a really cool time, because I obviously know something you might be excited about, but it could be very different. So it could be this week, it could be a project you're working on, it could be just something small, it could be something you've released recently, it could be anything.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll spill you some tea then, because I haven't actually... I'll spill you some hot tea, because I haven't said anything about this on social media at the minute, but me and Alex at the minute, we've taken this month off Life Bar. December's kind of one of those dead months for hospitality anyway, and obviously we've just come out of the second lockdown, so everything's a little bit all over the place anyway, so we thought take some time off, take December off, obviously spend some time with my mum, help her out here because she's not doing too good, and also focus on our next move. So we're improving a lot of the systems behind Life Bar at the minute, because potentially we're looking to replace me, the position in Life Bar, because I'm full-time there at the moment, and me and Alex want to grow an e-commerce business of some sort. So at the minute we're building the kind of foundations, trying to contact the right people and understand obviously everything behind the idea, if it's actually feasible, you know, what the good points would be, what the bad points would be. But we would love to do something e-commerce, so basically, you know, like just something that's solely online, if you like. And obviously I think that's very important moving forward, because obviously with COVID and everything, having a physical business and a physical store like Life Bar can sometimes be very problematic, because obviously it's so, you know, things like COVID obviously have affected it so much this year, whereas if you had something online, it's more likely not to get as affected as something that's actually physically there. Like obviously we're paying rent and business rates and God knows what else, but something online doesn't get affected by these things. And I think businesses that have an online presence are really the future. So yeah, at the minute it's I won't tell you what it is, but it's nothing to do with fitness and it's nothing to do with food. So it's
completely outside the realms.
It's something that solves a problem, which is what I love. So I love going on social media like TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. I love seeing gaps and finding things and being like, if somebody had this, it would really solve this problem. And then thinking a lot of people could really do with this item, and it could do really well. So at the minute, we're just testing the waters with it. We're speaking to people, seeing if it's actually feasible. It might not be for one reason or another. But yeah, we're using this time at the minute to understand whether or not where we could go with it, how well it could potentially do, things like that. So yeah, exciting stuff. That's definitely something I'm excited about at the minute.
Wow. This is the thing. You've spilt some tea, but not the whole lot. And I'm sat here now thinking, ooh.
I don't want to say anything like exact, because it might not go ahead. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to get too ahead of myself and be like, oh, we're doing this, this and this, and it doesn't happen. Because I think it's easy to do that when you're excited. You just want to tell everyone about it.
Yeah.
But like, until I know that I've got it locked down and I understand everything behind it, the costings, absolutely everything down to the website, you know, I'm not going to pull the trigger and start telling people, because you also want to start telling people in the build up to actually releasing it. And obviously I'm quite far away from that. So I think when you get too excited and you tell people, you know, you kind of increase that, you know, anxiety and that expectation, that excitement from, you know, your followers or whatever, or people that, you know, are invested in you. And then because you take so long actually doing it and manufacturing it and making it and then actually making it on sale, you kind of lose that build up and that momentum. So I don't want to say too much until I know everything behind it and I know it's actually feasible to do it. But yeah, I'm excited about it. It's got nothing to do with fitness and it's got nothing to do with foods. It's something completely different. But yeah, I'll leave you on that note. Think about that one.
Cue your DMs full of random people messaging. Are you making this?
What are you doing? No, me and Alex have had a few wacky ideas over the years and stuff, and we kind of keep them all on a little notes sheet. And they're all ideas that I think would be great and they would do well. But it's kind of trying to figure out which one of those would which one of those would do the best immediately, and which of those would be the easiest to actually do. Because sometimes when, like you said, when you're starting from kind of like a lower place, that you haven't been given X amount of money by your parents or whatever, you know, you kind of want you might have all these fantastic ideas, but it's always best to start with something that is the easiest to grow initially, and it's not going to cost you too much, and it's something that could still go far. So we're kind of starting somewhere on the list, and potentially in the future, if we're fortunate enough to get ourselves in a good position where we have more money behind us, then some of those other ideas could come out and be done, things like that. But it's all kind of trying to filter everything into a priority, if that makes sense. But
yeah, absolutely. I think the important thing as well, whenever you start something or whenever something is new, it has to be right? It can't be like it can't be like a half-assed thing, because although obviously you don't want to pour your heart and soul and money into something because you think, oh, what if that doesn't work? But what if it does? And I think it's important with what you're doing. And actually, this kind of starts to take us into the conversation, which is really nice. Is that if you're going to start something, and please correct me if you think this is wrong, but if you don't pour your heart and soul into something, and it's not something that really does, like you said earlier, you really want to tell me because you're excited about it. If you don't have that excitement about something, those times where you need to get up at 5 a.m. and then you don't go to bed till 3, or, you know, that just won't happen, and that won't work for you. Because I'm not saying there's anything, you know, royal about that. You know, I'm not saying that you should, you know, to be a good business person, stay up all those hours. You know, I'd rather be in bed, quite frankly. But sometimes that's what your business needs. That's sometimes what you need to do.
Sometimes it's about sacrificing certain things. I totally get you.
And it has to be, because things don't wait for people. And, you know, when it comes to new businesses, and this is something I'm criminal for, is I come up with loads of ideas. And over when I was a kid, I used to build stuff non-stop. I would always be building things because I would see something and think, oh, I could make something out of that, or oh, that would fit in there. And my room was like a amateur version of Scrap Heap Challenge. But, you know, like you said, with this, there is an idea, but there has to have a practicality to that idea. So if any of you are listening thinking, oh, I really want to start a new business, or I really want to develop this product, you have to think, okay, great. But if that product costs you £300 per item to design, and you don't have a lot of backroom money waiting to be spent on that, then the reality is you might only be able to make 3 of those things. And at that point, the practicalities just aren't there. And so, like, for you, for example, you're saying, you know, is there a practicality to us designing X and then actually selling X? Or is this actually something we might have to wait before that practicality comes to fruition?
I think there's always things you can do in the immediate term. Like when me and Alex started Life Bar, we had a director's loan from the bank, which we pay off every month. I think it's almost paid off now, so we're getting up to those 2 years kind of point. But yeah, we had a part director's loan. We use some of the money that I've kind of saved from social media and working with brands and things like that. But it wasn't all kind of just like our money. So there is things you can do, but it's obviously, again, it's weighing up the risk of things. And, you know, I don't think you want to be using 100% a loan to start something. I think you want to be using some of your own capital, but you don't want to be obviously sinking all your money into something either at the same time. So that's just going to leave you in a negative space. So it is all a bit of a balance. Life Bar was one of those things where it's that typical scenario where you kind of cost everything out. You think it's going to cost you X amount to start it, and it creeps up and it creeps up and it creeps up. And that's something I think people, you know, you may do all your diligence before you start a business. You know, you may cost everything down to the penny, but there's always going to be some hitches along the way, especially with a physical business like Life Bar, like a restaurant. You know, the electric work, they might find an issue with it and it may cost you another £50-100. You've got to have that leeway too. So you've got to put yourself in a position to understand, okay, this is worst case scenario and then some. This is best case scenario. And you kind of want to be working off those 2 limits. And it's always going to be somewhere in the middle, if not, unfortunately, near the worst kind of end of things. And that's kind of how you've got to think all the time, because otherwise you're just going to get yourself into a space of like, oh my God, this is costing me way too much. It's way more than I thought. And then it's just stressful. So you need to have that kind of risk adverse kind of approach of knowing worst case scenario and thinking, okay, well, that's worst case scenario and then some, if that makes sense. And then you're kind of on the right tracks. But that's kind of what I wanted to touch on with like e-commerce and doing something online. There's probably going to be way less risk and way less actual background cash involved with actually doing something online than doing a physical business like Life Bar. So that's the reason we're kind of swaying more towards something online now. You know, we still want to grow Life Bar, we still want to do things with it in the future, but it's way harder to grow something physical like that than it is to grow something online. So there is those aspects to think about as well, for sure.
There's actually a crossover here. For those of you who are thinking about, you know, becoming a personal trainer maybe at the moment, there's actually a lot of similarities here between, if you looked at e-commerce as a general, like maybe not some of the more niche areas, but if you took a product, any product that could be used by people versus a physical shop. When I was personal training, I could only train people in that vicinity. You know, I couldn't train some people from America. They couldn't fly over for a session and fly back. So as soon as you go e-commerce, you get the expansion of the people who could potentially pick up your product. You know, it would be like Gymshark only selling Gymshark products in Birmingham. You know, after the first 6 months, everyone would have it, and that would be the end of it. They'd have to go and set up shop in London and then set up shop. So that absolutely makes sense. And, you know, the actual expansion of anything online, I think, you know, makes a lot of sense. And if you look at even shops like Argos, for example, although they have a physical shop, the way that they do things is very different to a lot of shops. Like they store everything in a warehouse, so they don't have to have like people going out front and like, you know, hanging up stuff or replacing things, because it's all just out the back. So that's like almost a mid ground, because it's, you know, not all the work of having everything out front like you'd get in like Tesco, for example. So just to touch on a couple of points there then. The first one would be, you spoke at the start about how Life Bar started, and you've kind of alluded in that last bit about, you know, certain loans, kind of getting enough money to start with in the first place. When you took on the challenge originally, so when you and Alex first started and you went, do you know what, we're going to do this. What were the main hurdles that you guys kind of wrote down, if you like, and then what would be the things that you found, and maybe even specifically as a female, if there are any, that you thought might have been a hurdle here? Because I think that's an important thing to touch on here. You know, as nice as we'd like to say the world is at times, it's not a fair one. And so I think that would be quite beneficial for the ladies listening to maybe get a bit of a view from your perspective on the challenges, and then obviously how you overcame those.
For sure. I think, I mean, starting with the main things, obviously, of starting Life Bar was obviously the money aspect. I mean, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, money comes into almost everything these days. It's just one of those things. It's kind of like your golden ticket into anything. So like I said, obviously, you know, we looked into loans. We also managed to secure a grant as well. So one good thing to look at is there's always lots of good charities and places that may be locally to you that do grants. And the grant that we got was actually a local charity and someone that kind of still supports us and helps us now. And actually through that charity, we met our mentor, which is probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me and Alex, is getting our mentor. It's David Lloyd. The man is an absolute genius. He has thousands of businesses that he buys and manages. I think he's got about £350 million in his holding company. He is Mr. Monopoly Man. Like, he's insane. He's very straight to the point. He tells you how it is. And I think it really helps me with one of the main things which you touched on, is like, okay, as a female, you know, what are the hurdles? And I think one of those things for me was naivety, but also naivety and the confidence in a very male dominated space. Like, no one really talks about females a lot in business. It's mostly a very male orientated space, talking about business and trading and things like that in general. And because of that, mixed with my naivety, I found it very hard to find my place and find my confidence, and also have confidence in talking about, you know, what I knew and my experience and things like that, because I felt like almost it was invalid. And obviously Life Bar was my first business, but I did it with someone, obviously Alex, who had a business previous. So I learned a lot from him and his experience. I learned a lot from David. I think it's really about finding people that can it's always the people you surround yourself with. And Alex and David have always been very supportive with me and helping me find my confidence, obviously helping me with my experience and teaching me things. And I think that's the best thing you can do, is surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that want the same things in life. And they'll push you into the right aspects. They'll push you towards confidence. You know, if they believe in you and they want the best for you, it's a win-win situation for everyone. So I think massively what's helped me is surrounding myself with the right people, talking to them, listening to them, and believing in myself more at the same time as well, because a lot of the time you're a lot more capable and knowing than you think you are. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's absolutely true, because back when we first started Life Bar, I just felt very out of my depth, because Alex had already had a business and David already has thousands of businesses. Here's me, my first time kind of thing, and I had a lot to learn. Especially, you know, trying to be obviously, you know, with Alex at the same time. You know, we were just getting to know each other really. It was only in the first 6 months, you know, where we kind of transitioning into Life Bar. It was all a very quick turnaround. So it was a lot to learn. But I definitely think more so than anything, it's the people that you surround yourself with and the people that you can speak to and learn from. And getting a mentor for sure. Like if there's anywhere online, you know, you can find, you know, people that you can speak to, or mentorship and things like that. Obviously look into them, make sure they're actually experienced, you know, check out their LinkedIn and everything like that. Make sure you're getting the right person in the right space. But just having a mentor or people around you that have that experience, I think is the best thing. 100%. It's all confidence. That's what it is. It's all confidence for sure.
Something I'd add to that last bit, if you're looking for a mentor or professional, a YouTube ad probably isn't the best place to go. I would recommend getting a recommendation from someone else. Jack and I actually spoke about this the other day, and we were saying, you know, you get all these Forex traders come on your Instagram like, hey, earn millions of pounds like me. I think if you're earning millions of pounds, why are you advertising to me about that? Because pretty sure you would keep your secret and you would do things the same. So I wanted to ask, with the point you brought up about, you know, kind of self-confidence almost, I think we would call it, in terms of, you know, knowing your worth as an individual who has these, you know, what you would say experienced people around you. I think there's 2 points to that. My first point would be that for some reason, and I think this is true of a lot of people, for some reason, and I don't know if this is just a UK based thing or just maybe some individuals in the UK, but we're almost taught to dim our own light bulbs in order to not seem like we're outshining other people, or to not light up other people's darkness, again, to be cliche. And I think in doing that, what it can do is almost set you on a little glass roof on your head, which says, hey, you aren't allowed to be as good, you know, and you can't celebrate that, because actually you might make him or her feel worse about themselves. And something I've been talking a lot to my clients about recently, because COVID and the stress of that and other people's insecurity seems to be shouting louder now than ever before.
100%. 100%.
So my question then, to come full circle, would be, is there anything that particularly outside of maybe your mentors that maybe as an individual that you did, or that you felt was appropriate at the time to be like, actually, do you know what? I am worth this. My point is very worthwhile. And you know, I'm as clever as the next person. So I might not know that stuff now, but for sure I'll learn it soon.
I think it's trying to get a better understanding of things. Obviously there's a lot that goes into Life Bar, and there's a lot that I needed to understand, and getting confident. Knowledge is confidence in one sense. The more you know, the more confident you feel talking about something, speaking about something. So I may not be an accountant and amazing with numbers, but I've taught myself with Alex's help and other people's help to understand numbers, what goes behind the business. It's also checking the people that are involved with it as well. So if you've got people, say they're doing building work or electric work and stuff, it's making sure that they're not taking you for a ride, you know, checking all the invoices, making sure they match up with the amount of hours they've done. It's really being the boss. I hate using that word, but it's being the boss, and like that is you. Okay, this is my shop, this is my premises, this is my business. I'm paying you, and I need to make sure that I'm getting, you know, what this transaction was worth, and you're not taking me for a ride. Because a lot of people will try and do that. Even now, me and Alex get so stressed out with companies that we're involved with, say for like the card reader or the till terminal and things like that, and they'll put extra charges on the account. You know, you have to be so involved, and you have to really just plunge yourself in at the deep end and just try and understand all these individual aspects, because when you don't understand things, that's what leads to confidence issues. And you don't have to be a mastermind at all those individual points, but if you have some knowledge into it, if you look into it and you try your best to understand it, that's what's going to grow your confidence outwardly. So it's always kind of like, it's picking the things that you're the worst at and just trying to become average at them, if that makes sense. I'm never going to be a mastermind and an accountant or anything like that, but I have a general understanding of how things should look and how things should work, and that gives me then the confidence as a business owner overall to run Life Bar, if that makes sense. But hey, I'm still not the best at absolutely everything, and I never will be, but I've still got a lot to learn at the same time. So it's kind of understanding, okay, these are things I think that if I just looked into and understood them a bit more, a fraction more, this would give me more confidence. But also understanding that you're never going to be amazing at every single thing. You can't be a jack of all trades. That's when you just spread yourself too thin. So I think it's just having an insight and understanding into the smaller intricacies as best you can, and that will give you the confidence as a person to say, this is my business, I understand it as much as I can, and that's kind of when you come full circle and you're like, okay, nothing really kind of scares me too much anymore because I have a good enough understanding of things to move forward, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain, but I just think generally just grabbing experience and looking into things and delving into things a bit more over time has just given me that confidence, I think, just to know, okay, I understand these just enough to be able to move forward, and nothing's going to throw too much in my face, if that makes sense. But
yeah, I think that's a mark of some very, very successful people. So a couple of people who come to mind here. The first one, I believe Warren Buffett said, he won't ever wait till he's 100% confident in something. He'll wait till he's 80% confident and then he'll go for it. Because at the end of the day, once you know enough, the rest will be taught to you. It's like driving a car. You learn to drive a car when you pass your test. You don't learn to drive a car when you've got an L plate, because everyone's nice to you at that point.
Exactly.
And the other point I would say is knowledge is very interesting. So I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he says knowledge isn't power. Knowledge is potential power. It's only power if you decide to use it. And that's why I really like what you said about confidence, because actually knowledge, if you know something, gives you the capabilities to answer a question or to make a statement or to interject. But it's then the ability to have that and go, do you know what? If I look like an idiot, I don't care. I'm going to say this anyway and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people miss their opportunities. And I don't know if you...
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's that all or nothing mentality.
Yeah.
I just want to slot that in there, where people are just like, until the situation is perfect, until the environment is 100%, I'm not going to do it. But that's kind of like the key to everything, is that nothing's going to be 100% perfect. And if it is, there's probably a problem, or there's probably something that you haven't quite understood or looked into. So yeah, I just wanted to slot that in there, because I've had that a lot of my life. I've had that all or nothing mentality where I'm like, once I'm at this place and once I've got this, then I'll be happy, or then it's the right time. But that never works out. It never works out.
I am 100% the same as you, in so many ways. And actually, or more often than not, you end up shooting yourself in the foot, because again, you can disagree here, but I think more often than not, you either miss an opportunity, which could have been a great opportunity, but you didn't know enough about it at the time, or you did, but you thought you didn't. And someone else has taken the opportunity. Or, which I think is the worst, is where you think, I know, I'm going to teach myself this first, and then I'm going to go and get help. But at that point, you actually are lying to yourself, I think. You have a mentor, right? And you've had coaches in the past. You are very open about people who have helped you. And I think a lot of people, and including myself, like this was me many years ago, where I thought, well, do you know what? I'm going to get so far, and then I'm going to get somebody to help me. The truth is, that first 3 months would have been 1 week if I'd have got someone to help me in the first place. And so I think that, and I think I actually have no right to say this at all. So I'm going to pass this back to you as a question. But do you think that potentially, based on what we've said so far, that glass ceiling, and especially maybe confidence in women in business, is potentially one of those situations where people might be waiting a little bit because they don't have that confidence, or because maybe they do have that glass ceiling, and therefore it makes it even harder for them?
Yeah, it's even harder. Like, you know, you've got so much that kind of stunts any kind of growth when it comes down to business. The word business and being a business person or owning a business is still something I think society is kind of played to be more male orientated. And obviously,
Yeah,
like looking back over the years, there's obviously a lot more male, you know, a lot more males that, like, you know, kind of at
of
the top of
course.
the food chain that have businesses over females. But I think generally, you know, coming into 2020, things are definitely evening out now. There's a lot more influential figures out there that are female, that do
Yeah,
very well, that are very successful. And I think it's just kind of understanding that, you know, your sex doesn't really differentiate how capable you are to do something. And I know it may seem like that because society puts it across that way, but it's kind of understanding, okay, I just need to have a little bit more confidence in me. And yes, obviously, like I said, that may come from just knowledge and experience and things like that. But like we touched on before, sometimes, you know, you need to just start it to enable you to get that experience. Like I there's no way I would have been able to teach myself half the things I know now a year and a half into owning Life Bar. There's just absolutely no way. You know, Google is a vast place, but there's nothing on Google that would have taught me the things that I know now, because all of those things come from experience. So yes, you can set yourself up maybe 25%, 40%, but the rest of the way is just being as diligent as possible, you know, always asking questions, always looking into things, always trying to understand the whys behind things, and then your experience alongside that will grow. So don't get too caught up in the initial drop in the deep end of like, okay, until I know this and this and this. Yes, there's certain things you need to know, but a lot of this is going to come from experience as well. So what I wanted to mention as well is I think there is no kind of exact cookie cutter like way of being like, okay, once I know this and this, I can start my own business, because it's all going to depend on the business you start as well. So, you know,
yeah,
starting Life Bar, a physical business, is going to be very different to, you know, someone setting up a clothing store, or someone maybe doing online PTing or something like that. So again, I don't think you can kind of put yourself into the same mold as other people. You know, you
yeah,
may take,
yeah,
you know, inspiration from people, and you may look to them and listen to everything they say, but if they're doing something completely different to you, you can't relate that as well as you may
yeah,
think, if that makes sense as well. So it's hard. There's no clear cut answer. But I think the main thing is just, if you know you've done everything you can in the forefront before you kind of take that drop, then
yeah,
that's all you can do, and the rest of it is kind of history, the rest of it is experience. And it's also understanding that, okay, this may go completely wrong, this may go average well and then pick up, or this may go absolutely amazing. Don't get caught up in social media. And, you know, companies like Gymshark, for one, I think, you know, Gymshark have always done so well since the get-go. And on social media, people only really talk about the positives and the things that have really
mm,
worked. There's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses that have never made it and completely failed, but no one talks about that. So I
no,
feel like people always have this mindset when they're influenced by social media. They see everyone being successful, and although they know that it could potentially not be successful, that's not in their mind because no one's speaking about that. So it's also understanding as well that it may go completely wrong, may go tits
yeah,
up, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
it may go completely wrong. Like, Life Bar may not have worked. It may have completely fallen on its face, and we would have wasted all that money into it. But we knew, you know, the idea was there. We knew that the customer base were there. We knew it was something that was wanted. So we just ran with it to a certain extent. So it's so hard, isn't it? There's no kind of
yeah.
like, I can't give you a sentence which is like, this is what you need to do, or this is how you need to think. It's just, it's one of those things. It is one of those things.
The truth is, though, that you can't give us a sentence, but there isn't one, is there? There's not a,
Mm-mm.
you know, any business, whatever it is, and I don't know if there are any smooth things, really, but it's a boxing match, isn't it? You train as best you can, and then you roll with the punches, you
Yeah.
know, and if you have a certain skill set that will
Mhm.
allow you to stand back up and roll with them again,
For
you're going to be
sure.
successful. You know,
Yeah.
if you're someone who went in blind, and as you said, you know, for a lot of people, owning a business is about money. Because that's
Yeah.
the way that the world works. I read a
Mhm.
quote earlier, actually, as part of I do a bit of reading every day on like mindset based stuff. And one of the things said, it was something like, money's not important, but really it's just about as important as oxygen, because it is the thing that helps the world go round.
Yeah.
Your gratitude towards that depends on the value you give it, and that's a completely different podcast on itself. But
Exactly. Yeah.
the thing is with this is that when you set up a business, and from what you've said, it sounds exactly similar to my experiences too. You end up having a situation where you can either know everything you need to know and not take the shot. So, whether that's for you buying life bike, you could have got all the information in the world. You could have known all the things that you would have learned. But
Yeah.
by the time you did that, someone else has set one up and your opportunity's gone.
Yeah.
Equally, you could have a situation where you know just enough and you have a capacity as people, so yourself and Alex and the support group that you have around you, to go, do you know what? We will get into the ring, we'll buy it, we'll do it, we'll get going. And after that point, we have to be able to roll with the punches. And it cannot be solely about money at this point, because if you just worked for money, you just wouldn't have done it. I don't think, and you can correct me there, but there has to be passion. And that's what I was trying to say at the start. If you're not willing to put in those hours, because if you look at people's hourly rates in the first year of their business, for example, I think people probably make less than minimum wage, like far less.
Oh, I don't earn anything from LifeBar. I don't earn a salary from LifeBar whatsoever. That's kind of lucky in the sense that I built up enough money behind me to kind of not take that from the business and kind of push that into the, the people, the staff that we take on and things like that. But, even if I did take one, I'd take minimum wage. Like it's one of those things where, again, I think social media comes into play and people think when you own a business and you start a business, okay, well, if you don't have a Range Rover and a Rolex and a great house in the first year, then you're not deemed as successful. And I hate that. And I think, I like material things. I would like material things in life, but I don't want people to put me into this category of like, oh, all I'm working for is the next best car and the next best watch and going on holiday and things like that all the time. Like, it's so much more than that. It's kind of building your own mini empire, if that makes sense. And like, I love David's outlook at life. Like, David, he's not a fancy guy. Like, he almost bought a secondhand Bentley not too long ago and he decided it was too much risk when he's got £350 million in the account. You know what I mean? Like, David is very, very focused on just kind of building an empire and really understanding business, and he really enjoys the ebbs and flows of everything along the way and just kind of being that manager or that monopoly man, if you like. And I think David has always been a great inspiration to me and Alex in that sense that he has the money to do all these things, but it's not the first thing that he does, and he's not connected to social media in any way. And I think social media has just become this, unfortunately, this horrible place for people that are starting their business are kind of in that, the first step of things where they're like, God, like, no one's going to think I'm successful if I don't have these things, these elements and stuff like that. But in actual fact, unless you're very lucky and your business absolutely takes off and you have expendable cash flow to do those things, you're only going to put yourself in a bad position. So, we've closed for, I'm going to say 5 months total this year, and not all of those months we've had money provided to us by the government. Sometimes, technically we've lost money that month because obviously we weren't open, but we financially put ourselves in a viable position to handle those things. So, having enough cash flow, if we had to close for the next 6 months to a year, it's having those things in place and making sure that you're not living above your means is something I like to say. Like, I could go out and buy these things right now, but I'd be living above my means right now. I'm not in that position yet to have some of those things, which I would love to have some of those things in the future. But the main thing for me is building security in my lifestyle and my environment for me and my family at the same time. Like, for me, having money in the future is about giving back to my mum for everything that she did for me in my life, whether that be buying her a house or something because she can't afford to get the house she wants in that area. For me, it's just being able to look after myself in the future with healthcare and things like that. If I get ill, then I've got the money to be able to help me or Alex or my mum, things like that. Do you know what I mean? It's building security in a lifestyle at the same time for me, and it's the enjoyment and the passion along the way of building something and an idea, but it's also the main goal for me is just mainly security in life, because life's scary. Do you know what I mean? Like, and money comes into so many things, and I think just having that cash flow and that money there along the way just provides you so much safety and security in your life. So if something happens, you know that you've got the means to sort it out, if that makes sense. So Yeah.
100%. I think you'll find we're very similar in that regard. Very, very similar, because I think that social media has taught a very instant gratification lifestyle.
Yeah.
There are many times in my life where I could have bought the things I wanted, but I've always loved cars,
Oh, me too.
and
Yeah.
not from like a materialistic point of view. I was saying this to Katie yesterday. It's frustrating for me. I love watches. I remember buying watches off eBay when I was 16, so I could take them apart, fix them, and wear
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
But the problem is there are two things now that are so materialistically based. But you can
Yeah.
bet your life when I've still got my Ford Focus is being trusty now, and I won't get a new car until I drive that thing into the ground, because
Yeah.
I value it so much for the fun that it gives me. And people will be listening to this, like, how do you have fun in a Ford Focus? You can have fun anywhere you want. It entirely depends on the way that you view that.
Yeah.
But the problem with social media is that it's taught this instant gratification lifestyle. I'm going to get a new car, that people are paying £400 a month for a car when they only actually take in £1,100, which means during COVID, for example, if you were on
Yeah.
furlough, and I don't mean to touch anything sensitive with people listening to this, but it's true,
Mhm.
you're spending half of your paycheck on a car, which you can't drive. And
Yeah.
so when it comes to security, and this is where I think we align highly here, my view on this is I can either buy a watch,
Mm.
which I could do, which I love, or I
Mm.
could do something sensible with that money and then buy 3 in 10 years
In the
time, should I
future.
want to,
Yeah.
and I think the point
Exactly.
here is that security comes differently to different people. Some people say, I don't even want to watch, so why are you talking about, that's, this is something that I
Yeah.
like. And like you, Beth,
Yeah.
I admit that I have some materialistic things that I would like, but
Yeah.
I'm sensible enough like you to know that actually, if I want to have security, that's not going to be a watch on my wrist or a car on my drive. That is
Exactly.
going to be, what is my money doing?
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I had to pay to have my knee reconstructed, for example. And if I'd have bought a car, I'd have a car, but I couldn't walk properly,
Yeah.
and so you have to
Yeah.
ask yourself, how does this weigh up? For some people, they would put that car all over Instagram, oh, sweet car, but deep down inside, you never really know what people are feeling. You never really know how people are doing mentally. For
Yeah.
you,
I
for
know.
example, you could have seen a really lush car on my Instagram, but
Mm.
the truth is, I was really, really low. Like, I couldn't walk properly. I was completely crippled, for want of a better word. My back was gone, my hips were gone, but
Yeah.
I had a sweet car, so everything's great. It's just
Yeah.
not true. The problem with social media is
Yeah.
not enough people are too straight down the line, and I think
Mm.
that honesty gets lost in algorithms. It gets lost in the materialistic nature that people have, and that's what
Yeah.
human beings are.
But
But
it's not what people want to see, though. This is the thing, like, people want to see instant success, just like in training. People want to see, like, people want to know that in 8 weeks' time they're going to have the body that you have, or in 8 weeks' time of doing my business, 8 months' time I'm going to have a Lamborghini or something like that. It's this kind of like, people don't sometimes want to hear that, companies like Grenade are like 10 years old, and David, bless him, he's like late 60s, almost early 70s, and yes, he's got all this money now, but he's that kind of age group now. He's
yeah,
not 30 or 25. Yes, there are people out there that do make millions and millions in the first couple of months, and they might be 21 or 20, but that is a very small percentage of the overall people out there
yeah,
doing that. And people need to remember that good things sometimes do really take time. When I first started Life Bar, I was kind of under the naive expectation that because it was a new kind of industry and this, and this, it'd be kind of easy for me and Alex to just, have one store and then have another one in a year's time, or another one in 2 years' time. And loads of people still ask us, like, when's Life
yeah,
Bar opening in Birmingham, or when's Life Bar opening in London? And truth be told, things like that take absolutely years to put into place and to do a good job of it at the same
yeah,
time.
yeah,
So yeah, it's having that kind of understanding that sometimes things might take longer. Like, do you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
not that
yeah.
instant thing, like you said.
I really like this. Mike Tyson, I say this to a lot of people. Mike Tyson said, everyone's got a plan until you get a punch in the face. And it's true.
Yeah.
If you go in, and I talk about this a lot, and there's a lot of, I see a lot of similarities between a fitness journey and a life journey.
Sure.
And this would be quite cool to talk to you about, I'm sure. And a lot of people, I personally believe, the thing that fucks people over the most is their expectation of a situation.
100%.
If
Yeah.
you line yourself up with the expectation, if you're listening to this now thinking, I know if I get, if I get hold of XYZ, if I manage to buy this premises and do this, I can run a really successful business. The truth is that's probably 5% of what it takes, because the idea that you have and the passion that you have to come first. And if you don't have those two things, then why is anyone going to come to your premises? You just have a building with nothing in it.
100%.
And it's the same with fitness. You know, a lot of people at the moment are talking about Christmas. And to me, and I don't know how you approach Christmas, you know, each to their own. But to me, you know, I can put on 3-4 pounds through Christmas and I just don't care, because my expectation, I'm not got a competition to prep for. I'm not in any category of weight that I need to be in. I just think I'm going to have a few drinks. I'm going to eat some pigs in blankets and I'll have at it.
No, exactly. 100%.
The thing that screws people over the most is they're going to go, this Christmas is going to be different for me. I tell you, that I'm going to weigh the same, and then in January I'm going to lose more weight. And I think if you look at the statistics of people who lose weight in December, people who try and diet in December often end up gaining throughout the next year, because that level of restriction leads them to then they're missing out, FOMO, right? And so, you know, it's the same thing, expectation. If you expect that you're going to lose weight and you don't, you're going to be disappointed. But if you think, if I put on 2 pounds through Christmas, never mind, and you put on none, you'll be like, winner, chicken dinner.
For sure. I think it's the understanding that life and fitness and training and business isn't a linear straight line. That's what I try and say to people all the time, is it's not going to be constantly like this. Like life bar, you know, we'll have a really good day, and then the next day, you know, we might not do so well, and then we might have 2 good days, and then, you know, maybe 2 bad days or something like that. And it's the same with fitness as well. Like I've had so many times the last year where I had to have an operation. I think it was last year for endometriosis. That knocked me out for a good 3 months. This year I've obviously had COVID, life bar closed. I'm going to say it, you know, so you can understand. I'm not going to say the word depression in the sense that I was clinically depressed, but I got into a very, very bad space in the second lockdown. The first lockdown was a bit iffy. The second one for me was absolutely awful. I was basically staying up till 1 a.m. every night, and I'd be in front of the mirror in the other room, and I'd be criticizing parts of myself, thinking, you know, obviously the gyms weren't open, so I was kind of training at home, but thinking like, if I just lose a little bit of weight, like, you know, my stomach won't look so blocky, and, you know, maybe like, you know, all these things and stuff, like really being so critical of myself. And I think sometimes I slip into these headspaces of forgetting that I'm more than just me and how I look now. I have life bar and there's other things I want to do. And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, I'm not the person I was 2 years ago. I'm not as crazy on it with my food and my training and stuff. Like I want to somewhat enjoy life at the same time. And I think it's having this understanding that unless training and being an Olympic bodybuilding athlete, for example, is your full-time career, like it is for those guys, unless that's you, then stop taking it like that. You're only going to put yourself into such a bad headspace. And then I wanted to say that because a lot of people think that maybe I would have kind of got this really tough mental state now that I've been doing social media and for 5 or 6 years now. But no, I still certainly slip into those times where I'm very critical of myself. I think to myself, I could have done more. I could have trained harder. I could have pushed myself harder. You know, I need to stop eating a bag of pop chips, you know, on a Saturday evening while I'm watching Mandalorian. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's certain
Shout
things.
Out pop chips.
Love them. But it is not linear, and you know, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm always going to struggle somewhat, I think, with certain things, like even life bar, like, you know, when it's certain systems aren't perfect, me and Alex get really irritable because we're both perfectionists. You know, when I've missed a day of training, I get annoyed with myself. I'm just like, you know, well, if I'm not doing this one day of training a week, then I might as well not do anything at all. And there's the all or nothing mentality again that kind of creeps in. So it's one of those things where nothing's linear, and at the same time as well, unless you are a pro Olympic bodybuilder, then stop treating everything like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that fully, 100%. And I think that actually another thing that ties in here is that, you know, if you're not working 15 hours a day, you're not an entrepreneur. Fuck off. Like, that's just ridiculous, to be honest, because quite frankly...
I'll tell you something really quick. Me and Alex and Jamie, when we're at Life Bar, sometimes joke about this all the time. And like, Jamie would have gone to the bathroom, say, like for 30 seconds or a minute, and he'd come out and I'd be like, what were you doing in there? And he was just like, oh, just going to the bathroom. I was like, so you're telling me that you went to the bathroom and you weren't multitasking, doing some trading? replying to a few emails as well in there. I always do this thing, like you will come in and Jamie will be like, oh, I'm tired last night. I was like, oh, what'd you do last night? And he was just like, oh, I went to sleep. I was like, you're telling me you went to sleep when for 8 hours you could
You
have
could have
been
been training.
grinding, you could have been on the grind, you know what I'm saying? Like, we went through this phase of taking the piss out of it so much, but it's so true. It's this mentality of like, oh, if I'm not always seen to be working and doing something, then I'm not successful, and it's just so exhausting. It is exhausting.
The problem with that is it's a perpetual cycle, isn't it? You feed into other people's insecurities. Like, don't get me wrong, when, and I think I said this on a podcast a few weeks ago, so I'm not going to sit here and be a hypocrite, but when the second lockdown was brought in, I think I worked like 19-hour days, 3 days straight, but I had a job to do. I had a mission, and that mission was to supply all my clients that needed a new plan with a new plan, as well as do everyone else's check-ins and the shit I need to do normally. I don't put work above my sleep. Like I rank sleep very highly because I know what a negative effect that can have on my psychology and my mental health. But sometimes you need to do that. And the problem with social media is that you see people posting up at like 3 a.m, still going, or like, you know, and I think like sometimes a bit of self-verification, like exterior verification can be nice, of course, but fundamentally, you know, you need to be relying on yourself for that shit. The second thing I think I would say is, and actually I did want to ask you about this if you're open to talk about it. You know, we spoke earlier in the conversation about the difficulties of being a female entering undeniably a male dominated business world. But actually you've not just had an easy role personally in the last year, and you know, feel free to not discuss this, but you know, you've had a lot of illness to manage outside of a business. And I guess there's people, and I admire you for it 100%. You know, I think it shows a lot to be able to, you know, not only roll with the punch of a business, but roll with punches of a physiology that you have no control over. You know, you really don't. There's obviously some things you can do, but, and so I guess what I would say to you is like, you know, not only running a business through COVID, but also handling these things. Is there anything that you would say is particularly beneficial to other people who may be a bit down at the moment, or maybe thinking like, I can't carry on, or I can't do this? You know, there must have been maybe moments where you felt like that. So it feels like everything's stacked against you, right? What maybe could you give advice on, or would you say helped you perhaps?
I think mostly for me, what kind of pulled me through is just, you know, the passion mostly of where I wanted to be and what I want for myself and for Alex and my family. That's the main thing. Like you said before, if you're just doing it for the money, but the passion isn't there, it's not really enough to kind of get you through. And I know there might be a lot of people watching this that potentially may not have their own business, and that's no shame at all. Like, having your own business is not for everyone, and there's plenty of super successful people out there that, you know, do the Monday till Friday at an office and they work their way up and whatever. So I don't want to deem that as like me being derogatory to those people, but I think if you don't have somewhat passion for what you're doing to some extent, then there isn't really anything to get you through. And that's where you kind of come to that sticking point of like, I hate my job. And then obviously COVID comes around and there's closures and there's furlough, and you're only earning potentially 80% of what you were before, and there's bills to pay and things like that. And that's when there really is that struggle to kind of pull through and find something that you're passionate about. But you know, something that kind of makes me really happy, I've been on TikTok a lot recently because I'm kind of surveying it as another platform, just seeing what's going on. There's so many small businesses on TikTok where people have just got this kind of side hustle. You know, there's people on there that make dog biscuits in their kitchen and they send them out to people. There's people that, you know, do Christmas decorations. There's people that make these amazing kind of like chopping boards and they put this glass stuff on it and stuff. Like, there's so many people on TikTok that have just got this small little side hustle. And that doesn't mean to say that that overcomes your full-time job, because obviously you might not be making enough to completely leave that job, but then that just gives you something there that you enjoy. And yes, it may not be making as much money and it may be quite small and things, but it gives you enjoyment and it gives you fulfillment. So I think if you can't get out of your kind of full-time job at the minute, if you're not in that position, it's trying to find something, you know, behind the scenes that really gives you passion and enjoyment. And that might just be, you know, having a pet or having an animal, or it might be your kids, or it might be your family and things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a business, but something aside that's just material focused, like just money. So like a 9 to 5 that you may hate It's just finding something along those lines that gives you passion, or, you know, really motivates you in life. So, you know, you may have a 9 to 5 that you hate, but it's providing money for you and your family to be able to go on that holiday that you wanted together and enjoy time together and spend time with your kids at Christmas. So it's one of those things. It's like there's no clear cut answer again, because, you know, having a business is not for everyone, you know, especially something that's like, you know, I don't have another, you know, a job full time on the side. You know, if life bar goes down the drain, well, I haven't got anything, you know, as a kind of backdrop, if that makes sense. So that may not be for everyone, but maybe a small little side hustle or something that you
Yeah.
really enjoy. Like, there's a lot of creators now on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram that have these very small niche businesses, but they do so well, and you can tell that the person really has like passion for doing it at the same time. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers it that well, but it is quite a difficult question to ask. Like, it's
Yeah.
one of those things, isn't it? It's quite difficult, but
Yeah, I agree. I think would it be fair then to round it up that basically saying your why outweighs anything that comes your way? You know,
oh
your reason is far beyond the
yeah,
rush, if that makes sense.
yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people may say that money focused is enough to kind of get them to that place, but although money is the golden ticket, it's still very hollow if there's no kind of meaning behind that at the same time that runs along. You know, like I said before, and like you said, we want material things in the future. I like the idea of having a few things, but it runs very alongside my why. So that's what stops me from just kind of cutting the, you know, jumping over to the other side of the fence and buying all these things and stuff like that, because my why kind of keeps me sustainable, you know,
Yeah.
and it keeps me
Yeah.
on that path, because I'm not at that stage yet where I could just have those things, and until I can, I'm not going to, because my why is my future for me, Alex, and my family. So yeah, I think it all comes down to that, doesn't it? Like, at the
Yeah.
end of the
Yeah.
day. Sure.
I agree. I think as well, the problem with being money I'm not going to lie, like security is a huge thing for me as well. So money obviously comes into that.
Yeah.
Um, and it sounds like obviously that's a relatively universal thing, right? If you have a financial security issue, or even insecurity, if you like, that's certainly what I would call mine. You know, then money does come into it. The problem I find with that mentality, which is something I'm very lucky, and I think probably a bit like you, I would say I'm lucky that I work in a job that I love. You know, I
Mm.
can spend hours doing this because I love helping people. I love chatting to people, and you know
Yeah.
that to me. And you know, people say, "Oh, I do it for free." The truth is, I wouldn't do it for free because I wouldn't be able to live.
Well, this is it. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the same thing when people say, "Oh, you know, you have 24/7 contact with me." You don't, because I'll be asleep for 8 hours a day and I won't reply while I'm asleep.
Yeah.
um, but the point here is simply that when your why is the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, when that
Mm.
why is the thing that makes you do the things on the days you don't want to do, and your passion carries you through the rest of it, there's really
Yeah.
nothing that can stop you, is there? You know,
No. No.
money can become an issue. You're not broke, you just have a cash flow issue at the point. You know, there's never an
Sure.
end point. You know, if I think broke, I think done, down and out. You know, if I had
Yeah.
no money, down and out, I would just have a cash flow issue at that point, and I need
Yeah.
to solve that.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, I think, that for a lot of people, and for those of you who don't have a business right now, and maybe never want one, because believe
Mm.
me, it's not all fun and games. You know, when you're self-employed and COVID hits, it's not fun. When you
No.
own a business and COVID hit, it's not fun, because you don't have
Mm.
furlough, you don't have that support of a job, and
No.
you know your job and your income and your security rely solely on people coming into you.
Mm.
The thing I would say is that for those of you who are in a job at the moment who maybe don't enjoy it, ask
Mm.
yourself this question: do I not enjoy it because my expectation is that I won't enjoy it? Or is this
Mm.
not aligning with something that I want to be? Because
Yeah.
for a lot of people I talk to, you know, I have clients who say, do you know what, my job makes me miserable. And I think, does your job make you miserable, or are you
Mm.
miserable? And there's a big
Yeah.
difference,
No,
because
that's true.
if you go to work and, you know, you could have any job, and I'm not going to name one, you could have any job in the world, and it
Mm.
can be the worst thing you can possibly think of. If you go to work every day with your why, and that why is to feed your family and support them, that's the best job in
Mm.
the world, because it's doing
Yeah.
exactly that. And you can go to
Yeah.
work with a smile on your face, and you can go to work
Yeah.
and pour yourself into that. You could
Yeah.
earn millions of dollars, you know, you could earn absolute millions. You could be the most miserable person in the world, because A,
100%.
you might just be miserable because actually money you thought would solve your happiness and it didn't.
I didn't,
Or
yeah.
B, it might not align with you as a person. You might have got that money trading, or you might have got that money doing a job you thought you really liked, but then it turned out to be something that actually didn't fulfill you and the things that make you happy. And that's when, like you said, Beth, actually these little side hustles can be a nice idea, because you end up contributing to society in a way that or that facilitates your soul, if you like. That sounds quite deep, but I think that's true. You know, for me, for example, I'm very good at maths, but being an accountant wouldn't satisfy the part of me that wants to help other people. You know, I'd be probably helping people who didn't need help. So, you know, a bit like for you saying, you know, about your why, it's almost irrelevant to a sense, the scale to which the business does well. It's more that actually it enables you to just do those little things, because like me, if you don't get those materialistic things, that's not the end of the world. That's just a cherry on a big cake. The cake is what matters. I assume.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's if you can't, like we said before, like if you can't financially just get yourself out of the job that you don't particularly like at the minute, try and find more reasons as to why you're doing it to help you through that. So if it's providing money for even your cats, like if you got cats and you love cats and you're able to feed them cat food, well, it's coming from the job, isn't it? And you love your cats, you want the best for them. And then, you know, from that, if you're able to, just starting something that you may be passionate about. And again, it's like coming down to that thing of like having your own business and starting something small doesn't mean to say that you have to be the next Gymshark and you have to be earning $1 billion in like, you know, 5 or 6 years. It doesn't have to be like that. And I think as soon as people remove themselves from the expectation that if they have a business, it has to immediately be successful, otherwise what's the point? I think you need to remove yourself from that sometimes, because even starting a small business like that, like obviously Alex is a good example in the way that he tried so many different things when he was younger. He's a PT obviously, but you know, he went to Dubai, he did wealth management, he was you know, working on sites, on building sites for a long time. Like he did so many different things. He did trading. Like I think he told me that he tried to do some trading once and he put all of his money into a trade and then he fell asleep and he woke up and it had gone completely down the drain. So, you know, that was years and years ago. Like we dip into it every now and again because it's quite interesting, but we don't spend any money on it or anything like that. But he tried loads of different things, and then, you know, although, you know, he's not a chef, you know, he started Smoothie, which was the meal prep company, and he actually, you know, enjoyed it. He had passion for food. He enjoys cooking, and that's kind of where Life Bar started. And I think sometimes it's about starting something that you're like, okay, I feel like I could quite enjoy that, and then it may go on from there. You know, Smoothie, I think, you know, was very small for Alex. You know, he was breaking even, if not making a very small amount of profit. And then from that, Life Bars emerged, and it's done 10, 20 times that, and it's done amazingly well, and it's got so much potential, and it's just an incredible business. But sometimes it's about starting small and not being afraid to do that, because everyone thinks that when you start your own business, if it's not making millions in the first year, then what's the point? Sometimes it's about testing the waters and understanding what fulfills you and why you enjoy it, and from there that might be the trampoline that you need to move on to the next stage. Who knows? So it's trial and error sometimes. Sometimes it's just about trying things. Do you know what I mean? So
Absolutely, yeah. You've actually just picked up my next point, because you said something a little bit earlier,
yeah.
which got the point in my head, and then you basically discussed it. One of the things I think is really important is retraining, and actually training in general. So if, for example, I didn't want to be a coach anymore, say I didn't want to do that, what would I do? Would I just sack it in and then move on? No, hell no. I would get very good at something else first, because that makes sense. You know, if I had, you know, whilst I was at university, I managed a pub and at weekends, and I got a shift at the gym as a level 2 PT, and I was doing my level 3 at the time. And so, you know, that was a lot of hours, right? That was a lot of hours. But what I knew was that I needed my pub job to pay for my university. I needed my level 2 to work at the gym, and I needed my level 3 to do the job I wanted to do. So what I did is I worked all weekend at the pub. I went to university during the week, or, you know, mostly. And I retrained at the same time, because then when it was ready to pull the trigger on my pub job, which I actually liked, you know, it was talking to people. I enjoyed the people who came in, etc. But it wasn't me. It wasn't me helping people. when it came to pull the trigger on that, I already had another stream of income waiting. So it wasn't like I sacked off my pub job and then went, shit, what do I do now? It was,
Yeah.
I know exactly where I'm going with this because I enjoy training. I trained some of my flatmates at university and so on, and myself, and it went from there. So what I would say to you is exactly what Beth has just said. I know a couple of people actually who bake. So they have full-time jobs and they bake. So they make a little business out of baking. And you can almost bet your bottom dollar that give it 5 years, when they've got a bit more money in the bank, maybe security in a house or something like that, they decide, actually, I've got enough business coming in now to leave my job and do that as a full-time job. Or they might just decide, this is just a hobby that I enjoy doing. I don't want the pressure of taking this into a business, and they'll keep it as they are, which is fine as well. You know, it's nothing better than serving people, getting paid for it, and doing something you love.
Exactly. Sure. Yeah.
But I think that's a really important thing is to know that it's actually a little bit like what I said to you earlier, Beth, in that you're no cleverer, or you might be cleverer, but you're certainly no stupider than the next person, which means you have the capabilities to learn something that they know. Now, you might not be the next Einstein or the next, Bill Gates, but you can certainly develop skills that will enable you to be very good at loads of things and exceptional at one or two. And it's really interesting because you hear contrasting like advice on this. It's, make sure all your skills are up there. I actually disagree with that. I think everybody as an individual has something that they're uniquely very good at.
Yeah.
For some people, it might be their personal skills. It might be maths. It might be communication. It might be empathy, or, excel, become the best person in the world at that one thing. And you'll have something that other people don't. You spoke earlier about finding a product which was needed in the market. We all carry something which is needed somewhere at some point.
Yeah.
But the problem is everybody's so busy trying to be great at everything that become a jack of all trades and great at nothing. So become great at what you are great at, and let everything else creep up behind it. For me, I struggle with reading, for example. I'm quite dyslexic, so reading takes me ages, or used to take me ages. Now it's something I can read very fluently because I refuse to be bad at it. But I'm not going to write novels for a living. I'm not going to be someone who can read a book in a day. But I can read very fluently now. Because I refuse to not be. I thought I can read much better than some people. Surely, there's no reason, if they can read, why can't I read? And even with that kind of disability, if you like, it was something I was never going to be like, I refuse to just say, because to be fair, and this kind of comes on to another point, I'm kind of ranting now, but if you have an excuse, it's still invalid. I could say I'm dyslexic, I can't read. People would say, okay, fair enough. But I don't get the result I want for that.
No.
I'm not able to write guides for people, or information things or advice or things like that, because I can't read and write. So I can either hold the excuse of I am this and that's the end of story, and that can be my identity, or I can go, fuck that, I'm going to do whatever I want to do because I'm as capable as anyone else.
No,
I think that for a lot of people, they kind of go, I've been told I'm stupid my whole life, that's it, I'm actually stupid, and they just kind of sink away into the background. But it doesn't have to be like that, right? And I coming from humble beginnings, I think it's important for people to see that actually what matters the most is a passion for something, and it's a compassion and understanding of what you are capable of as an individual. And I think you embody that. You certainly do, from my perspective. So
no, I totally agree. And I think there's lots of different types of intelligence. I think there's obviously like academic intelligence, but I think there's also emotional intelligence as well.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
And I think I definitely excel more at the emotional intelligence than I do academic. And Alex is exactly the same. Like, neither of us, we've always got, okay grades and things like that, but academically we're not genius. We haven't got an amazing IQ or anything like that. But emotionally, that's what's kind of tied us together and helped us work through life bar, and getting to know each other in a relationship and having understanding and patience with each other at the same time. Like, we've really kind of grown together in that respect. We've taught each other a lot of things at the same time, but we've always been on a very even keel with like, okay, so how am I feeling about this? Is this something I could change? Is this something that's just kind of like a mental block, but not necessarily a physical one that I could actually remove? It's kind of understanding those things as well. And there's nothing wrong with being academically clever, but then not emotionally, because those things are all, you can learn those things. Potentially if I spent more time actually like reading into things and trying to be better at my academic stage back at school, potentially I could have got better grades. Maybe not a genius, but I could have got better grades. And this is emotional intelligence. It's also about delegation as well, and finding the right people. So like I think it can be very difficult to start business by yourself, and I think potentially if you can find the right people to delegate certain skill sets to, that's when it becomes successful. Because like you said, you can't spread yourself too thin. Alex is, although he's not academic, he is good with numbers. He has certain, he has experience in obviously finance management and things like that, which I didn't have. Me more so than anything, I've always been very creative. So obviously with social media, I did marketing at university. Like I've always been a big creative. So, we've kind of gelled together really well. Alex brings the kind of level-headed expectation, really got himself rooted to the floor. I'm a little bit in the clouds, creativity, but we pull each other to a good, so we're not completely on the ground about things, which doesn't, then block us moving forward and starting new ideas, or like maybe starting the business that we're trying to start at the minute. But I haven't got my head totally in the clouds with my expectations, and then kind of like putting myself in a bad position because I thought we were going to be here when we're only here. Kind of thing, you know what I mean? So
that's what makes you a great team, though. It's like the yin and the yang, isn't it? It's having the two things that work so well together. Because if you were both level-headed, you'd never have any ideas, or if you did, they'd be so safe they probably wouldn't work because someone's already thought of them. And if you were both up in the sky, you'd have no money left.
Exactly. No, that is exactly right, for sure. Yeah.
So just to start to bring this one to the end now, because I'm curious, we've had a lot of your time.
No,
if you could give somebody 3 points, if they said to you now, look, Beth, love all the information, but what can you tell me that would be your 3 bits of advice for me now? I want to start my own business. I'm passionate about this. I'm confident about this. What would be the 3 things that you could say to that person?
3 things. Oh, that's quite hard to put it. I'll try.
You could use the things we've spoken about today. I just want to kind of give them a 3 punchy thing to finish with.
Yeah. So I think number 1 is definitely managing your expectations, understanding the financials behind starting that idea. What is it going to cost you? Time. Is it going to be something, feasible that you can actually do? 2, surround yourself with the right people. So if you've got, friends that kind of, maybe you say to them, I want to start this business idea, and they're like, oh, fuck that, just, come out on a Friday night kind of thing. Like, maybe that's not the kind of people you want to surround yourself with. At the same time, so people is very important too. And I think maybe the 3rd thing as well is confidence in yourself. 100%. So if you say you wanted to start something, say you're really good at baking cakes and you wanted to start something, where you bake cakes for people's weddings or events and things like that and send them out, but one thing you're not too good at is like numbers and costings and things like that, well, look into that a little bit. You don't have to be a genius, but there's plenty of free accounting courses online that you can take. Alex was taking one for a period of time to help him level up a little bit in that understanding. So pick out the things that you potentially think you're not as good at and try and get average at them. Like we said before, you don't have to be the best, you don't have to be amazing at them, but as long as you have a bit of understanding, that's going to give you so much more confidence to move forward with that idea and execute it, because otherwise you won't be so hung up on, oh, well, I don't know anything about that, and if I don't know anything, then I can't start. So I hope that was kind of like, that's kind of a little bit more elongated than maybe you want.
No, perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Beth, I can't thank you enough for your time this afternoon. We all really appreciate it. I hope you guys listening got all the things written down from that one. And, if you do start up a business and use any of the things we spoke about today, do let us know. I know you would like to know. I certainly would like to know myself. In terms of people who maybe don't follow you already, could you let them know maybe where they could find you, where they could contact you if they want to? I can obviously put it in the bio, but it'd be cool for you to give a shout out.
So I try and be as attentive to my DMs on Instagram as possible. Sometimes it goes through fluctuations and things like that. I've got an email address, which is bethfitnessuk@gmail.com. That's always in my YouTube bio. So yeah, I mean, I try and get back to as many people as possible. I try and do as many kind of Q&As as well for like general questions and things like that. And I'll always try to get back to you. I can only apologize if sometimes I may not see your message immediately. Sometimes there is like a fluctuation. But
damn busy lady as well. Got
that?
stuff to do.
No, but I just don't want anyone to think that, oh, because she's got X amount of followers now, she doesn't care about replying. That's not it. It's, there's so much I try and do in my day for content production and things like that. And I allocate, a certain amount of time depending on how much things I've got going on in that day to reply to messages and stuff. Because I appreciate every single person that messages me. And I don't mean that in a cliche bullshit way of like, oh, I appreciate everyone that messages me, but I don't care. No, I genuinely care about every single person that messages me. And I will do my absolute best at all times to get back to every single person. But sometimes it doesn't happen, but I try and put as much things on my story sometimes that I find are helpful, Q&As and things like that answer general questions. On my YouTube, I try and go into more depth about certain topics and things like that because I have that capability.
What is your YouTube?
Bethany Tomlinson, plain and simple.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Sorry, I just thought we'd shout that out then because you hadn't mentioned it.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Fantastic. Well, thank you ever so much, Beth. Guys, thank you ever so much for listening. We'll catch you again soon. Have the best day and we'll speak soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.